Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 77 of the Citrix Session. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. I've got Bill Sutton with me. Bill, how's it going?
Going well, Andy. Can't complain.
So, Bill, I've been living through birthdays and graduations and vacations over the last 45 days, and it's been awesome. But at the same time, my life has been turned upside down in terms of trying to balance work and personal time. It sounds like you've got a birthday or two coming up, and now you're in that same boat.
I am in that same boat. My mother's birthday is tomorrow, and my wife's birthday is the day after. So I've been struggling to try to come up with ideas and figure out what I'm going to get both of them. And it's always fun to kind of try to fit it in. And last weekend was a whirlwind anyway, so I'm not sure. I'll probably get some of the stuff tonight and some of it tomorrow night. So
And how do you take that world of work-life balance and tie it to what Citrix is trying to do with the workspace, which workspace includes your life, right? I do things every day that's part work, part not work, all at the same time sometimes. And I mean, Citrix is really trying to solve that challenge with the workspace with intelligence model. Wouldn't you think?
yeah, absolutely. And I think, workspace with intelligence, one thing, and that the fact that we've got all the ability to leverage SaaS-based apps and virtual desktops from the same place certainly makes my life a lot easier. If I'm on the go or I'm, out at lunch or something and I need to respond to something, I can pull up details on projects without having to worry about security and get access to that information on the go. It makes it a lot easier to be, I can be downstairs instead of in my office and on my iPad and pull up what I need. So it gives us all a lot of options to get things done.
I'll tell a personal story. For me, we have a condo. I have a condo personally that people that work for XenTegra and clients of XenTegra stay at when they're in town. And we've made that a micro app. So the SharePoint site is now a micro app. So in the past, I could never remember the link to tell people how to get there. Now, if you log into XenTegra's Citrix Workspace, whether it's me or you, and we have different permissions, but you know where it's at. That's a great example of one way the organization has made my work and personal life balance better.
Yeah, agreed. Definitely hit that workspace and we have access to everything we need right there. All of our, Salesforce and our project management system and the calendar and, all of the other things that we need to do our job on a day-to-day basis is right there in one place.
And if it's not there, you put a request in the help desk, and they
Mhm.
make it there. They next
They
day it's
add
there.
it there. They add it there and that way you're not having to deal with bookmarks. And then when you're on another device, that bookmark may not follow you and all that hassle that comes along with it. Certainly something like a workspace really makes it a lot easier.
It certainly does. It gives the company the ability to kind of guide you through your day
Mhm.
and give you ability to be successful during the day, while also giving you the ability to bob and weave as you need to at the same time.
Exactly. And obviously when you look at it from an onboarding, offboarding, I think we talked about this on another call a week or two ago, may not have been a podcast, but the ability to really quickly get a new employee onboarded, just give them access to the workspace and say, go here. They've got to have a device of some sort, but
Yeah.
that device can be just about anything.
Yeah. Any device with an HTML browser on it
Right.
um, can get to it and use it. And that for me, just last week I was traveling in the hotel kiosk. It was not new by any means, but it had a good enough browser on it where I was able to get to our workspace and use the HTML5 version of Citrix Receiver baked in or delivered to the HTML5 browser. And I sat there in the hotel lobby while I was waiting for an hour or two, and I got work done. It was awesome.
Yep, exactly.
Well, you and I have decided to review a 7-part blog series by Anna Ruiz from Citrix, and we've asked that, this is my fault. I didn't ask her soon enough, but we've asked that she join us in the future to cover some of these. But Anna put together a 7-part series. It's called 7 Ways to Simplify Your Digital Workspace, or your digital workspace deployment in 2021. And just at a quick glance, this was obviously a no-brainer for us because a lot of what she covers are things that we try to coach customers into and our consultants almost every day.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the first one we're going to cover here is probably going to be about providing a platform to host your environment on, whether it's in the cloud or on premises, and that's specifically around Nutanix, which, as you know, we've kind of found our way just falling into the Nutanix world because we needed an easy to configure integrated platform for our workloads, and Nutanix with Acropolis OS, Acropolis Hypervisor, their integration components with the hosting capabilities of Citrix Virtual App and Desktop Service, or even Citrix Virtual App and Desktop on premises, is a no-brainer. Really simple to do, one simple plugin, which we'll talk about here in a minute. This blog was co-authored by a guy named John Williamson from over at Nutanix, so we give him his credit too for giving us the content that we're going to review today.
Yeah.
So Bill, I know you've read over this. Can you just kind of sum up why modernizing the digital workspace is so important, and why Anna put this series together?
Yeah, I think based on reading the first section of the blog, kind of goes back to a lot of what we were just talking about, which is, you know, the organizations, partly because of the COVID pandemic, partly because of the changes in demographics of the workplace. You know, digital workspace solutions like what Citrix offers are really starting to come into vogue here, and you know, allow people to have that work-life balance, to enable productivity and things of that nature. It's not really something new, but you know, the ability to put everything in one place again, to make it easy for employees to work from any location on any device. And a lot of this goes back to the Citrix mantra years ago about any device, any location, any network. We're really now able to do that to a much greater degree, given the changes in how applications are delivered.
You know, I think it's interesting. Within the first couple words of the blog, it talks about, well, the title talks about workspace, and the blog talks about workplace. And if done correctly, those two things just kind of coincide together, and you, the user, don't know the difference, right? Your workspace
Correct.
becomes your workplace becomes the workspace that you're standing in front of at any point in time.
Yeah, it's kind of what the message that we've been hearing was: work is no longer a place. It's something you do, right?
Right.
You know, and the pandemic certainly reinforced that, because, you know, people were having to work from coffee shops when they could. They were having to work from home at various places in their home. Kids were going to school from home. So for the parents, they might be sitting in a bedroom, you know, doing their work. So they certainly weren't in the office, but they still needed to work. And the technology enabled them and their companies to be able to do that.
So I'll add one word to that real quick. Your work is no longer a place you go, but it's a digital workspace that you log into and interact with securely. And as long
Sure.
as you add that securely piece,
Yeah, the security piece is key.
it becomes the win-win we've been looking for. It's the
Yeah,
nirvana that we've been looking for a long time. And
absolutely.
necessity drove some of the things that might not have been perfect. Let's say at home, maybe in the beginning of the pandemic, you didn't have dual monitors.
Right.
But you were willing to get work. You were willing to use that setup just because you wanted to get work done. And then by the end of the pandemic, you might have had 5 monitors. Who knows?
Or you had a really big monitor you could carve up, you know, because the technology changed to allow you to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the concept behind the overall series. Now let's jump into this first blog related to the series. And it says the advantages of Citrix on Nutanix digital workspace solution. Can you kind of tell us what in your world you've seen, and why we as a company have been so bullish on Nutanix as a platform to host your Citrix environments?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, I remember Nutanix learning about Nutanix at a Citrix conference very, you know, very number of years ago, maybe a decade or more. Seems like it hasn't been that long, but really, you know, Nutanix as a platform, by collapsing everything from the old 3-tier model of servers, network, storage into one box, in a sense, and clustering them and making it highly available, and providing the kind of performance that's really needed for a virtual desktop or virtual app solution. It really fit really well with what Citrix, you know, Citrix was trying to do. But what I find interesting about the blog, and I asked this question earlier, I think, and we decided to save it for here, is it does make reference in the article to providing users with access to apps and desktops, both on premises and in cloud. And this says when you run Citrix cloud services with Nutanix Cloud Platform. Well, I'm not sure what that is. Maybe you can enlighten me on what that means.
Yeah, no, I certainly will. I do want to bring up a couple things real quick, though. I, like you, saw Nutanix first at conferences, and I was going around from booth to booth, and there were multiple vendors that talked to me about using software-defined storage to break the 3-tier architecture model and increase operational efficiency and speed. What really happened for me when I saw the fact that Nutanix was really in it to win it, is what I like to say. When when I realized, number one, with all these players, you were going to get local access speed using cost effective and becoming more and more cost effective local flash drives, whether it's now M2 or whether it's SSD that's super fast to begin with. That was a big aha moment. And then the big aha moment was when Nutanix was able to produce their solution on top of their own hypervisor, their own derivative of a hypervisor, so that you didn't need VMware or Citrix. You had this hypervisor that included the Nutanix Acropolis operating system storage mechanisms that would allow you to scale from a small implementation to a large implementation or multiple implementations. And because they worked with Citrix to write the plugin, that hypervisor plugs right into a Citrix on-premises solution, and even more applicable now to a Citrix cloud-based solution. That's when Nutanix went from being just one of the players to the player that was going to be a real viable platform for a bunch of customers in the short, near term, midterm, and long term future.
Absolutely. And the other thing, and I think this ties into what you said, is the ability to scale linearly. You buy a cluster of Nutanix to support X number of users, maybe 300 or whatever it happens to be, and you need to add another 100 at another node. You need to add another 100. You don't have to worry about architecting the IOPS on the storage versus the compute on the servers. All of that was scaled linearly for you.
Right. And you buy what you need when you need it. You don't have to go out and buy massive amounts hoping you grow into it.
Exactly.
You buy a little bit extra and then you grow into that. And while you're growing into it, recognize I need to go buy more, and I can use the Nutanix tools to help me predict what I'm gonna need to buy. It's just such a much smarter way of, it's kind of like going to the grocery store and buying some product, let's say peanut butter, for example, or I could go to Costco and buy this great big tub of peanut butter, which is great. I'll have it, but it takes up a bunch of space and it's extra money I didn't need to spend right then. It's not always, buying big is not always the right answer.
No, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so you asked me a question. So my comment a minute ago is short-term, midterm, long-term. The mid and long-term, and even short-term to some degree, for Nutanix is their ability to take their software-defined solution, which is what it is. It's not hardware, it's commodity hardware. Take commodity hardware that's available in your clouds like Amazon AWS and soon to be Azure and soon to be GCP. Take that same hardware that's sitting in those data centers, and instead of deploying the Amazon operating system on top of that hardware, you actually deploy the Nutanix operating system on top of that hardware, scaling it up, scaling it down. And then now basically what you have in Amazon or Azure or GCP is the same exact Nutanix solution you have on premises. It's just now it's more of an OpEx model that allows you to consume as you need to, even more than you can on premises.
So basically the same platform, but the ability to use the cloud economics or the cloud capabilities of being able to scale up, scale down as you need to without having to invest in more hardware potentially.
It 100% exactly that. It becomes an OpEx model, and you're a former accountant, you can see the value in that.
Yeah.
In addition to that, the skill set that you're learning on premises goes straight into the cloud with you, and you're not relearning a new skill set in the cloud. You're able to go back and forth literally real time. Now that may not actually exist today, but at some point there'll be the ability to live migrate a user without them knowing from on premises to the cloud and back, and they won't even know it.
Well, I was going to ask that question next, kind of as a stupid question. If you've got the same Nutanix platform on-prem and also you're subscribed to a similar platform in the cloud, can you live migrate hosts? Or at least, or even just migrate hosts from on-prem to the cloud, like in a DR situation?
Yeah, you would 100% be able to migrate them at a cold state, turned off now.
Right.
I asked this question before. I don't know. I may be putting words into someone's mouth. I would be shocked that if in the future you wouldn't be able to live migrate from one to the other. That would be extremely powerful. You got all these users, in your data center, and you're cost effectively hosting them. Friday night kicks in, you live migrate them to the cloud and put them on standby. And then you take your data center, and this is a stretch here, but people get my point. You take your data center and start doing, Bitcoin mining or encryption mining for data, for monetary, that type of stuff. I'm not saying people would do that. Some people would do that, but then you find other needs for your hardware to run all weekend, or you turn it off and then you turn it back on Monday. And if the user needs theirs, it'll turn back on in the cloud. And then Monday morning you start to move stuff back and power on, and you potentially save, 2/7 of your operating energy cost in your data center.
Exactly. And if you can rent it, kind of that model of the shared services model back in the mainframe days. You can make money off of it if that's something you want to do.
Yeah, yeah, you potentially, like we're doing with solar panels on your house, you can, put energy back into the system and actually defer some of the cost or make money.
Yep. Yep.
Now, in addition to this, that model allows you to, we're talking to a customer now that's talking about taking their on-premises and instead of paying for their DR solution that they currently have, they're just going to use Nutanix to have a DR solution, standby in the cloud. And really what we're now talking about, like, why don't you just move your production to the cloud and have your on-premises be the DR, and then,
Right.
or some other location. And you can kind of balance between the two, maybe do 90%, 80% in the cloud and 20% on premises. And at any point in time, depending on the cost, you could move back and forth and spin up more catalogs on premises, less in the cloud, or vice versa. That's extremely enabling and powerful.
Yeah, that's
Whether
really,
you ever take advantage of it or not, it's at least to have that options is great.
yeah, that's really powerful.
With the pipeline thing that happened a few weeks ago with the gas, the Colonial Pipeline, I came to the realization that I should probably have, if I'm going to have two cars anyway, let's have an electric car and let's have a gas powered car. And whatever happens in the world, I'll be prepared to at least get back and forth to wherever I got to go. In a normal day, they both work fine. But if one or the other breaks, I can default to the other.
You can rely on the other. Yeah, I lived that because I was down your way when that happened.
Oh, yeah.
For a while, I thought I might be stuck, although it wouldn't have been so bad to have been stuck in the condo.
Yeah. But now let's put that the other direction. I went to Atlanta over the weekend for a business trip, left Friday morning. Halfway down there, I stopped at a gas station and there was a guy getting a brand new electric Ford Mach-E Mustang put on the back of a rollback. I was like, man, what happened? And he said, well, I drove down to Atlanta thinking I could stop halfway. I didn't have a full charge. I thought I could stop halfway and energize the car. Turns out that one charging station that was his last hope was out of service. And so now he was having to get his car towed to the next one.
Oh, wow.
He probably should have just drove his gas powered car on that trip.
Right.
Well, Bill, I think we've covered this topic. Hopefully we've got Anna accepts and joins us for the next time. And I love the way she's kind of broken this up into very digestible chunks on ways to kind of simplify the workspace. This Nutanix piece or other cloud type integrations, those are no brainers. And we've certainly been leading our customers to this for the past.
Yeah, we've been doing this for a lot of customers, and you mentioned something earlier as we're closing here, though. You mentioned something earlier about the Acropolis hypervisor. When Nutanix, of course, first launched, it was all based on the VMware stack, and then eventually they added Acropolis based on KVM, and they have taken that and really enhanced it and made it a real first-class hypervisor. We have many of our customers are running it on AHV. We have a lot that are running it on VMware.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a first-class citizen, particularly when it comes to VDI.
Yeah, I mean, desktop, I call it dumb desktop workloads. I mean, if you do it right, they really are dumb desktop workloads. We don't need to add any extra cost. The Acropolis hypervisor does a fine job of that. And to be honest, what most people find is they kind of bring it in at some point, either full bore or half-heartedly, and then they find out, hey, this thing's pretty good. I might want to use it for my infrastructure workloads, and that happens quite a lot.
Exactly. I mean, back when you and I were first introduced to Nutanix, they were at these conferences that we went to, really focused on VDI, and that was one of their biggest workloads initially. And then I think they kind of started expanding as they got AHV out there and looking at other workloads like SQL and some of the medical software. And it looks like they continue to do that, of course, but VDI is still a big part of their workloads.
Yeah, without a doubt. Hey, we can't let this go. And I don't know if this comes up in a different blog in the series at some point, but Nutanix files, that's the second piece of the Nutanix story. Getting those profiles via SMB or FS logics or even folder redirection in the same environment, potentially and likely on the same server that the host is running the desktop workload on. That's another area that adds to the world of Nutanix and Citrix that makes it seem very, very near native. The users don't know they're in a non-persistent world.
Yeah, and you're getting away from file servers, having to set up Windows file servers or other types of file services. You don't need to point it to a SAN or a NAS because that's right there on the Nutanix. It's all data locality right there, local to the VM. So you've got good performance and good availability. It's a no-brainer. You're right.
At the very least, it's a 10 gig, one hop away at the very least.
That's exactly. Yeah.
You imagine if we had that when we were doing full-time consulting way back in the day, all the challenges we ran into.
Oh yeah, no, most definitely. And most of the challenges back then, as I recall, were a lot of the challenges, not necessarily all of them, but were storage related. Storage or storage networking, getting the kind of horsepower out of the storage we really needed. And something like this, the Nutanix solution for it, we don't. I won't say we don't ignore it, but it's not as nearly as much of a worry as it was back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah, you asked where we're going to put these file shares, and they would point to some old clunky file server,
Yeah.
100 meg connection in the corner. Oh, this is our file server. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, and you point it to that, and then they'd wonder why they had a 2-minute login as it's trying to pull all those profiles over there.
Yeah, 5 gig profiles.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh boy. Oh well, they got it. These kids today, they got it so much better than we did. All right, sir. Well, I appreciate you joining. I'm sure we'll have Ben back. I think he's on vacation. Let's do this. At the bottom of this blog, it talks about what's next. Looks like the second blog is how to simplify the Citrix virtual app and desktop application control plane. Obviously, that's a Citrix no-brainer. I was on a project last week with one of your guys, Alan, and we were going through the control plane in the cloud type stuff, and with WIM and Workspace, including gateway functionality. I was just kind of laughing. I was like, well, heck, most of the hard work's out. You don't even have to do that anymore.
Yeah, the hard work's the image. We're not, but when you think about it, the hard work's always really been the image.
Yeah.
That's really where you've got to do the tuning. That's where you've got to make sure your GPOs are set up properly. Your Citrix policies are set up properly. What we don't have to do anymore is get all that infrastructure set up.
Yep.
And a lot of the setup of Citrix virtual apps and desktops is a next finish. But the key thing there is the customer doesn't have to worry about, when you start talking about cloud, they don't have to worry about that whole SQL cluster that they really should have, right? A lot of them don't choose to do that, but they really should have a SQL cluster because it's critical to the functionality of that on-prem environment. But in the cloud, it's all there. And if you start adding in WIM, that's another database that you need to have in place, and that's in the cloud as well. So yeah, it takes a lot of the routine cyclical stuff that we do every time out of the mix, but we still need to focus heavily on that image.
Yeah, there's still plenty of room for good consulting for the tweaking and the tuning, but the heavy lifting, at least the heavy lifting and getting that in a redundant fashion, that's the key. That's really what you were talking about a minute ago, so that you can go deploy all across the country, across the world.
Right.
That's when it really got sticky the old way.
Yeah, and the old way, like you said, across the world or across the country, then you're starting to talk about multiple locations. And do you leverage your control plane at your primary site to support the remote site? No, you want to put control plane out there, and then you've got to keep those in sync, or you've got 2 points of management, and then you've got all the other things that go along with DR. When you put it all in the cloud with the gateway service, the gateway service can be local wherever the guys on the West Coast, it's going to use a POP in the West Coast for access. And then you can have resource locations pretty much anywhere you want. So it's all bound by the cloud connector, not by all those other components that we had to use in the past.
Right. All right. So let me just run through this. The first one we're covering today. Second one is the control plane. The third says how to simplify digital workspace solutions, virtualized and file services. I bet this Nutanix thing is going to come back then with files, I bet. How to simplify digital workspace security. Like we said a while ago, all of this is well and good, but got to keep the security element in play. Number 5, how to simplify reporting, analysis, and issue remediation. Obviously, a lot of tools out there. Citrix Analytics is probably going to be a big part of that story. How to simplify unified workspace. We talked about that a little bit already today. How to simplify business continuity and hybrid cloud. Love talking about disaster recovery and business continuity, and how Citrix plays into those scenarios these days, and the fact that people need to understand the difference between DR and BC, and how Citrix can really help enable that.
Yeah, that's key. And I think a lot of folks think they're the same or similar, and they are markedly different.
But if you deploy a services-based solution or solutions, they can become closer and closer to each other and become what people have always dreamed that they were.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, Bill, thanks. I think, I don't know about you, but I think I have 4 or 5 more podcasts a day. And my feeling is you're on at least one more of those. So we'll see you later today.
Okay, man.
All right. Thanks, Bill.